we head out to the fan hotline. He joins us at 9:20 every single Wednesday. It's our good friend from Cleveland.com, Dan Labbe, and he joins us now. Dan, what's going on?
Hey, Jake, how you doing?
Dan, I could be better. I'll be honest. We could definitely be better after Sunday.
Yeah, that was a tough one. That's one way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, so the loss was bad enough in sitting there and watching it and just going through the emotions of not being able to beat the Jets. Dan, what really bothers me is then coming into the next week and basically watching nothing then change after losing to one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the NFL, following their trades. How big of a problem right now is lack of accountability in that building?
You know, this is kind of how Kevin Stefanski operates, and I think sometimes it's a strength and sometimes it's a weakness. And I think in this case it's a weakness because I think there's a fine line between, being loyal and kind of not having knee-jerk reactions and then inaction. And this week just feels like inaction. They're obviously sticking with Dillon Gabriel at quarterback, sticking with Bubba Ventrone at special teams coordinator. Cam Thomas is still on the roster, and he's had multiple special teams mistakes. I think there is accountability to the extent that, look, they're coaching these guys up. They're watching this tape. I think they're being honest when they watch it. I think they're being honest talking about mistakes and things like that. But at some point, there does need to be some kind of action. And, I don't know if firing Bubba Ventrone would change anything on special teams, but it certainly is something that should be on the table because they've been bad all season long and they've cost them games. Again, going back to Cam Thomas, he's made multiple mistakes on special teams and then, of course, jumping off sides there. And you've got to wonder, what are you kind of keeping him on your roster for at this point? So I think there's things they could have done to make changes that they didn't do. And I understand why Browns fans are a little disheartened by that.
I thought Kevin Stefanski's answer was interesting today when they talked about accountability, and he talks about accountability behind closed doors. I mean, you mentioned some of it, Dan, but I guess I just struggle to see what that even means when you say you do it behind closed doors. Because I mentioned this earlier in the show, we use all the cliches in the NFL that it's a cutthroat business, that it's a what have you done for me lately business, and then it's not like it's Pee Wee football though. You're not having these guys run snakes after practice because they messed up. That doesn't accomplish anything. So what is accountability behind closed doors in your eyes?
We maybe we'll see on Sunday if again, let's say Cam Thomas, with Alex Wright's injury, there'd be an opportunity for him to play a little more. Maybe he ends up out of the rotation somehow or other. I don't know how much we would notice that because it's not like he was playing a ton to begin with, but maybe there would be changes on who's on those special teams units. And there'd be changes on, who's on the return units, who's on the coverage units, things like that. Kevin has always been really private about conversations he's had with players. So I'm sure there are conversations happening behind closed doors. And again, that's frustrating for fans because fans want to see it. And this has just been Kevin's style for 6 years now. He's just not going to be public about things like that.
How would you have graded Dillon Gabriel's play on Sunday from what you watched?
I know statistically it was better than what we've seen, but I still just wasn't impressed. I think I would give it a D. He's missing. The throw to Malachi Corley, I can't get over. You had a chunk play set up, and all you had to do was get the ball in Malachi Corley's hands, and that might have been 6 points, and he overthrew him on what should have been the easiest pass of the day. You can't take a sack on third down on that play before the fire drill. You can't take a sack on fourth down on that 4th and 1. Now, is it all his fault in those situations? No. But as a quarterback, you've got to understand how to get rid of that football, how to try to make something happen and not take a sack in those situations. So I think the eyeball test, again, statistically, it was a better performance, but I think the eyeball test kind of disagreed with that. I think he was still missing throws. We haven't seen the accuracy. We haven't seen the timing, all of those things yet. So I thought it was a disappointing game.
Do you still feel that they obviously keep preaching patience with the quarterback spot, and that they're seeing developments with Dillon Gabriel? Do you still feel like patience at this point in the season is the right answer?
I don't have a problem with it, and this is why. They're 2-7, right? So for them to even think about making let's say they had to get to 9-8 to make the playoffs. I mean, just do the math on that. They would have to go 7-1. This team's not going to go 7-1 to have a shot at the playoffs. So to me, it's just why not stick with your quarterback plan, as closely as you can? And part of the equation is how ready do they think Shedeur Sanders is. So if you give Dillon Gabriel one more game, 2 more games, that puts him at 6 to 7 starts. Then you could hand things off to Shedeur Sanders. You could get him, doing the math in my head, I don't know what that would be, like 6 starts for him, something like that. And you'd have a pretty fair look at both guys. So to me, at 2 and 7, I just don't see why it's a terrible thing to stick with your plan. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of faith in that locker room being lost with Dillon Gabriel. I think guys are saying the right things about him still. So I think you're okay in that regard, but it's just the reality of the situation. Give Dillon Gabriel 1 more week, 2 more weeks, then hand things over to Shedeur Sanders. We'll see if that's actually their plan. That's what I would do, and I don't have an issue with that just because of where they are right now.
Dan Labbe, Cleveland.com, with us here on the Fan Hotline. Dan, a conversation that was had earlier on the station today I thought was really interesting was you mentioned the support coming out for Dillon Gabriel, and you really haven't heard players go in any way hard in the paint for Shedeur Sanders to be the starter, or that in any way that they feel that the wrong starting quarterback is out there. What does that tell us about this quarterback situation, if anything?
I think it has been interesting how they've been very supportive of him. Now, I wouldn't expect anyone to just come out and throw him under the bus or say anything bad about him behind a podium. But I do think it's important to remember, whether you trust them to make the evaluation correctly or not. Right? The Browns coaches, the Browns front office, these guys are in the building. They see these guys every day. They're in the meeting rooms. They see them on the practice field. They know more about these guys than anybody. And I think that goes for the players too. They're in those meeting rooms as well. They're, practicing with these guys. They're seeing it every day more than we are. So I do think it's meaningful when they are supporting Dillon Gabriel to an extent, and we're not seeing that groundswell from players, or we're not seeing players start to hint that maybe they want to get a look at Shedeur Sanders.
Hey, Dan, is it fair to look at things right now in the way that the season has gone and almost re-question the idea that you move on from a guy like Kenny Pickett, given how, I don't know that we can fully say, they say Dillon Gabriel was ready for the start. I don't know that I see Dillon Gabriel was ready. They say Shedeur's not ready and Joe went out so fast. Is it fair to criticize that move at this point?
I think it is, and I think it's a repeat of sort of what they did a couple years ago with DTR in his rookie season. They went through that preseason, and they felt like he was ready to be the backup quarterback, and so they made him the backup quarterback, and they traded Josh Dobbs. Now, this isn't to turn Josh Dobbs into something he's not, obviously, but he played well that season when he was a backup. I think it was with Arizona and also in Minnesota. He had a couple good games. Browns, on the other hand, put DTR out there for his first start against Baltimore earlier than they wanted to, and it was a disaster. And that feels a lot like what's happening here. They really overreacted, I think, to what Dillon Gabriel did in training camp, and really more so what he did in those preseason games, that last preseason game. And they decided he was ready to be the backup. Then before he was probably ready, they had to go to him because they benched Joe Flacco after 3 games. If you had Kenny Pickett in the building, I don't know what he's going to be able to do, but at least he gives you a veteran presence. I think he gives you a better chance in some of those football games. So I do think that was a mistake.
All right, let's take a look at the play calling change made this week. Obviously, going from Kevin Stefanski to OC Tommy Rees. Did you feel like there's more hope with this offense after watching one game of Tommy Rees call plays?
I did like a little bit of what he did. I thought it was interesting. He came out on the first series, and obviously the series didn't go well, but they were in 11 personnel that whole series. Again, I mentioned that Corley play. I thought that was a nice little wrinkle. I do think Tommy's going to be a little more prone to sticking with the run game. One of the things he talked about last week was Nick Saban kind of taught him, with the guys you do well, put them in positions to do what they do best, and essentially just keep doing it, right? Let them keep doing what they do best. And I think he's going to continue to harp on that. I think it was important to get Jeudy all those targets early. Obviously, he gets in the end zone for the first time. He has his best game. There's still a little ways to go with him to get back to where he was last year, but I thought that was progress. So I think Tommy Rees did some good things. Now, it'll be interesting going against this Baltimore team. Their defense has obviously improved immensely since the last time the Browns faced them. It'll be interesting to see what he does this week at home against that defense. But I thought there were some positive things. It felt a little bit fresher, and maybe that was just a mental thing because we knew there was a new play caller. But I felt like it was a little bit better than it had been under Kevin.
I know. I mean, I definitely felt the same way. We look at obviously you mentioned Jared Jeudy's involvement. He walked away with 12 targets in that game, 6 catches, a touchdown. Based on what we saw in that game, is getting Jerry involved is something this offense still you think desperately needed to do and continues to need to do?
Yeah, I think you do, and then that emphasis to get him early touches. I thought that was a really important thing, and I like it when OCs kind of look at it like a basketball team, or look at him like a center that you're asking to get a bunch of rebounds, right? Every now and again we just got to force you a touch. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know, whatever. We're going to let you get a shot up. Well, with a wide receiver, maybe you call a play that you're not 100% sure what the outcome is going to be, but you get the football in his hands. You let him actually run a route and get to catch the ball instead of just running down the field and running back and running down the field and running back. So I think it helps with a guy like Jerry to get him involved early, let him touch the football, let him try to make some plays, and I think we saw that Sunday.
Again, Dan Labbe, Cleveland.com with us here. All right, Dan, we got obviously, as you mentioned, the Ravens coming up here on Sunday. Is there an ounce of belief from you that the Browns can actually walk away and win this game?
No, I don't think so. I would have a lot of trouble to pick this game. Now, the Browns have done well in the past, somewhat containing Lamar Jackson. They've done well. They've done really well against Derrick Henry, whether he's with the Titans or with the Ravens. For the most part, they've done well against him. So I guess there's that tiny chance, and weird things happen in division games. This defense plays awesome at home. So those are the things you would point to if you're trying to make this pick. But I think Baltimore comes into this game. They know that they have no room for error. They know that they can't get upset by the Browns this week. They can't get upset by the Jets next week. They have to win these games in front of them against these beatable teams before they start getting back into playing Pittsburgh again. And I think they finished the year with like Green Bay and New England. So they understand the importance of this game, so I don't think they're going to sleepwalk into Cleveland. I think they're going to be ready to go, and I think the line is 8.5 still. I think Baltimore is going to have a chance to cover that.
So obviously, Baltimore's a tough week to see the Browns winning. Hey, did losing to the Jets make it difficult to even rationalize games later down the season, like the Raiders and Titans games that, I would have went into this week thinking, those are games the Browns should absolutely be favored in, and there really shouldn't be much of a reason that you walk away and lose them.
Yeah, I think it absolutely changes the outlook for those games a bunch. I think this game should have shaken a lot of people in that building, and should have, if there were people who were like gung ho, hey, there's no way we're changing anything. I think that has to. I think losing a game like that has to shake that belief a little. And, Justin Fields threw the ball 11 times, and the Jets clearly weren't trusting him to throw the football. So the Browns should go win in Vegas, right? They should beat Tennessee when the Titans come to town. But we just saw them lose to a team that had a fire sale and didn't trust their quarterback to throw the football. And that's why you can't just start chalking up these wins that they're going to beat these teams. And you're starting to get to that point where you're having those discussions. Do you even want them to beat those teams at this point? But, yeah, if you were counting those as wins, I don't think you can count anything as a win at this point.
Hey, Dan, we go through it and we continue to look at games like that. I guess I struggle to see how you go through and then rationalize. Does you going through and saying, all right, well, should have shaken people in that building about change, does that go all the way to the top? Does that go to potentially an Andrew Berry and a Kevin Stefanski?
I would hope so. I would hope that, and again, it doesn't mean that you have to fire these guys tomorrow, or it doesn't even necessarily mean that you have to fire them at the end of the season. But if they were thinking in that building like, hey, the season hasn't gone like as planned, but we've acquired all these assets, we're kind of looking towards 26, looking towards 27 even a little bit, just go out there and win the games you're supposed to, right? Beat the Jets, beat the Raiders, beat the Titans, maybe pull an upset in the division, something like that. You can sell that a little bit. This game, to play like that and have those mental mistakes, the way they lost that game, the special teams mistakes, again, just continuing to happen. Again, losing to a team that had a fire sale and is definitely looking towards 26 and 27. I don't know how you could just shrug that off. You can shrug off getting beat by a team like the Ravens. I don't know how you could shrug off just, getting beat by a team like the Jets.
All right, Dan, I've asked you a lot of negative questions, and probably rightfully so with this team right now. I'll give you an opportunity to end things potentially on a high note. Carson Schlesinger has obviously looked incredible coming off the ankle injury, looked really good on Sunday. Potential defensive rookie of the year. Can he still get that award even if the Browns don't find success this season?
I think he can. He's been so good. Now, it's probably going to be hard from the linebacker position, and I will be honest, I'm sort of like what Kevin Stefanski said on Monday. I haven't dug in to what every single defensive rookie has done. But with the way he's playing, and obviously they're ready to kind of push for that a little bit publicly with Kevin saying what he said on Monday in that Zoom call, I think Carson's got a chance because he's been really impressive. And for him to go out there and play like that on a high ankle sprain, which can be a 4 to 6 week injury sometimes, and it's hard to move, that was unbelievable. So, yeah, I think there'll be some buzz building for Schlesinger. I know Baldy was out there on Twitter doing a little Baldy's breakdown on him. He put out that play where he was chasing a tackle with his helmet off. So I could see some buzz building for Schlesinger here.
There we go. We got 10 things on a positive, Dan. That's maybe the last thing we'll get to end on a positive throughout the rest of the season. But
it's impressive. I'm impressed.
We appreciate you as always, Dan. Thanks for the time.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Dan Labbe, Cleveland.com, with us there on the Fan Hotline.